everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter. I am joined by Tim.
Hello, salutations.
Top of the morning to you. This is actually kind of notable, but it's not the last episode you'll get. You'll be getting the big episode later today. That's right, on Halloween, you're getting 2 episodes of Screams After Midnight because Tim made a stupid bet during our top 50 worst movies that came back to bite both of us on the ass. And we promised that if we ended up with the same movie in the same slot between us, that we would do a second movie for Halloween itself. And because we didn't get to any Leprechaun movies over the month, we promised that Leprechaun 3 would be the one we'd do. And obviously we reviewed Leprechaun 1 and 2 already. 2 was a hit. People loved Leprechaun 2 review. We got so much praise for that discussion.
The movie as well.
No. So Leprechaun 3 is what we're going to be talking about today, but it's also special for us because in terms of recording, this is actually the last Octoberthon episode we are recording. We are done after this and we get to rest for a while. So that's pretty notable to us. So this is the final hurdle, and by God did I save the worst for last. So Leprechaun 3 came out in 1995, exactly 1 year. Well, I don't know if it's exactly 1 year, but it was 1 year after Leprechaun 2, which was 1 year after Leprechaun 1. So they were pumping these out yearly, right? Leprechaun,
of course, there's high demand for it.
Leprechaun came out in 1993, and they just immediately started pumping them out one by one by year. So we're going to talk about Leprechaun 3, which has no characters from Leprechaun 2 in it, outside of the titular. What? Outside of the titular Leprechaun himself, of course.
Okay, thank God.
Jesus. It is set in Las Vegas, which will lead to some moments, I'm sure, as we talk about the plot. So we will... Let's not even bother with spoiler free. It doesn't matter. No one cares about spoilers for Leprechaun 3.
Oh, I mean, I think some people would care, but...
No, they don't. They don't. I am... Oh my God, I'm so ready to sleep. And I need to talk about Leprechaun 3. It's the worst thing ever. It's the worst thing ever. Alright, so... this is a stupid question, because Tim loves Leprechaun and loves Leprechaun 2. Thinks they're cinematic treasures, masterpieces of our time. Tim.
Yeah.
Do you like Leprechaun 3?
So, it's interesting because,
is it interesting, Tim? Is it interesting? I don't think it is. I don't think there's anything going to be interesting about what you're about to say, but let's find out. Let's find out how interesting it is.
Well, I mean, hear me out, because there's a logic to this, because the first one, obviously, it's good, but there's a lot of setup there. So, and then, like I said in the review for the second one is where things really get amped up and you kind of start to see the potential of where the series is going. And
potential?
Yeah. Yes. So there's a reason for this, because I'd mentioned before the second one is my favorite one. That's the one I've probably seen the most, but I don't think I've seen the third one that much, so I didn't remember too much about it. Other than the fact that it was set in Las Vegas. So I was really surprised when I rewatched it to find how well it held up. I think it is so interesting, the things this movie does with mythology. It adds so much to the character in such interesting ways. And honestly, I will go ahead and say that it is genius to take this movie that essentially has been about like greed and capitalism and set it in this setting where you can do so much with it. To have a character whose entire, his like all his wants and desires, it is about greed and his gold, and to set it in Las Vegas of all places, where it is it's Sin City. It's the city where people go to gamble and try to make it big and win, and so many people are there and wishing, because wishes play a big part of this, which is a very interesting wrinkle to the mythology there, which we'll get into in depth. But I just think it's a brilliant move from the filmmakers, and I was really, really stunned about how much they're able to fit in and do with the character, and honestly to do with the world too. It expands it in a lot of ways that I wasn't expecting. So I was astonished how much I enjoyed it revisiting.
I take umbrage with a few words in that spiel. The word genius, for example, springs to mind as being ludicrous.
Okay. I mean, well, I don't know if you want to say like brilliant or superior, or I mean whatever other word you want to use for it. I just think it's a very, very interesting take. And a lot of stuff you'll hear an idea like that, like, oh yes, of course, like that's where you would take this character, but sometimes it doesn't live up to the hype of what you think you can do with that. And I think they made such an effective use of the setting here that I was pretty much happy from start to finish.
Do you enjoy sitting in your own bullshit? Are you surrounded by just steaming shit right now?
I mean, I'm just saying how I feel. I mean, if you want, I could lie and just say like, oh yeah, it was a movie that I watched and didn't really care for. But I mean, I have to be honest, that the people expect the God's honest truth when we talk about these movies. And yeah, if it's a bad movie, I'm going to say it's a bad movie. If it's a good movie, I'm going to praise it for what it does well. And this movie did a lot of things well. And
no, it didn't.
I think there's so many good deaths here, so many good jokes. You can really feel Warwick Davis, like at this point, he is so fully become the character that it really plays out in his performance. He's having so much fun with it, while at the same time he's menacing when he needs to be menacing. He's creepy when he needs to be creepy, but he's also going to crack jokes, and the jokes here legitimately worked. There's a scene where he gets thrown out of a window, which I did find shocking, and he falls several stories to the ground, and then he gets right back up and he says, next time I'll take the elevator. Like, that's like a funny line, because and he knows what he's doing, and I think it works for the setting, because yeah, he's in Vegas, a city known for showmanship, so I think he is being a little hammy, which is again just like another very smart move, I feel like, on the part of the filmmakers.
I don't know if I can keep this up for like the 45 minutes or whatever this is going to end up being. The way Tim's going to end up being like a 3-hour epic review. I don't know if I want to get into this. I don't know if I want to sit and listen to this bullshit about how Leprechaun is defying genre, about how Leprechaun is taking things in an interesting direction, how there's themes. This movie doesn't have themes. Leprechaun 3 does not have themes, Timmy.
You don't think that this movie is all about like one of the original sins, greed? That's what it is. The whole movie is about greed.
Oh yeah, I bet when they were writing Leprechaun 3, they sat around the writer's table and went, you know what, this movie's theme is greed. We're going to have greed. No, they said we're going to have him in Vegas so we can do a joke where he does an Elvis impression at one point.
I mean that is just, if Elvis impersonators are like a big thing in Vegas, so that is obviously going to come up. And I think in less capable hands, that could have been like a very easily cheap, tacky joke, but I think it really works well in here, where first of all, they get a very good person to do the Elvis impersonation. Like, I really felt like, yeah, this would be someone doing Elvis in Vegas. And to see like another very iconic character meet, it's only his third movie, but it's like already a very iconic do
you hear yourself
character.
right now? Do you hear yourself talking? Elvis meeting Leprechaun, icon meets icon. Do you hear yourself talking?
Yeah, I'm just speaking my truth. What else can I do? This is this is my truth. This is the burden I must bear. And then so many different like obviously, yeah, you're gonna have him in the casino and everything, but also you're gonna include like magicians and him walking the boardwalk, and him having to deal with like the mafia. Like, there's so much crammed into this movie, which I didn't look at the runtime, but it's I think like about 90-ish minutes, but they easily could have gone on for another hour and a half, because I feel like there's so much that they could have explored. But I mean, it is paced very well though, so I can't really complain too much on that fact. But yeah,
You want a 3 hour cut of Leprechaun 3? Is that what you're saying?
yeah. I mean, if they when you think about the possibilities of him in this environment, what that means, all the different things he can interact with, different people that could get his gold. There's a lot to mine there. No pun intended. But I mean, yeah, what we got definitely works though. So, what did you think of the movie though?
It's shit.
Okay.
It's,
Wow, what a poignant review.
it's absolutely shit. What did you want from me? It's dumb jokes. You got
The jokes are funny.
Blatant sexism rampant.
Well, I mean, I don't think the movie is sexist. I think it's making a comment on sexism.
Oh,
'Cause
really?
there's like,
Is that why your hot blonde lead is in a skimpy magician's assistant outfit for like 90% of the movie?
well, part of the movie is trying to tackle like the idea of beauty that's like forced on women. That's why we have the character of Loretta, who is someone that basically feels like she should be more well noticed, and unfortunately it is such a society that's built on these ideals of beauty that were kind of forced upon women. And that's why, of course, when she gets the magic coin and is able to make a wish to look younger, which they did beautifully, by the way. Like, when she walks out and she has different hair, I was like, wow, I almost thought it was a completely different character. But yeah, no, that's why I think it's a good juxtaposition to have these different kind of people. And you can really feel like I think another thing that they're trying to point out as the movie goes is the idea of desperation. Everyone kind of feels like they're on their like last stand here. So that's why when they get this out of the magic coin, which I don't think to this point we've known that the coins are magic.
No, we don't. It's a complete bullshit new bit of mythology that apparently if you get one of these coins, you can just make wishes willy-nilly and get what you want.
Yeah, which it leads to like some really fun situations.
Yes,
So,
but Tim,
yeah,
don't you remember in the previous movie though, when he granted a wish, it was always a monkey's paw thing. It was always something bad happen instead. Yeah, in this movie, all you need is a coin. You can make a wish, and the thing will just happen as you want it. They get exactly what they want.
well, I mean, I think some people do end up, unfortunately, meeting some not so much desired.
They
fates.
do, but it's not usually because the wish backfires. It's usually because Leprechaun shows up and kills them, or because
Right, yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, which I mean, if you're talking about this movie, you gotta talk about the deaths. The death scenes are probably some of the best we've seen in the series so far. And I like that they incorporate other genres too. There's kind of like a sci-fi element, to the casino owner's death, which I thought was interesting when the woman crawls out of the TV to make love to him and turns into a robot. All while the leprechaun is appearing on the TV as different like infomercials. I thought that was really funny.
How long are you going to keep this tone up? This tone of this is a serious film with themes and it's tackling things. Leprechaun 3 is not tackling things. Leprechaun 3 didn't have a tackling thought in its mind when it was incepted. It is a film that is there to have Leprechaun go to the Lucky Shamrock Casino. Lucky Shamrock. And I'm going to assume this is not a real casino in Vegas, and do you know why? Because every other casino they look at when they're going down the strip is all, all these big bright lights. They get to Lucky Shamrock, and it looks like this pasted on sign in front of the whatever the real place is called. It just looks so tacked on.
I mean, sure, they probably have some limitations, so not everything is going to be like perfect, but I think for what they're trying to set out and achieve, they do it exceptionally well. And I do think it is.
This movie's not setting out to achieve jack shit. There's no achievements.
Well, no one's like trying to make a bad movie, obviously. And
this is not an Xbox game. There's no achievements unlocked.
I mean, I think it is probably like an easy take to just look at it on the surface and just kind of maybe preemptively judge it for what it is. But I do think if you sit down and really look at it, and if you do know your lore about leprechauns and take everything
Oh,
into account.
You want to talk about Leprechaun lore? You want to talk about Leprechaun lore? Let's talk about how someone finds information about leprechauns in 1995 when they don't have an internet connection. They get out their CD-ROM that's an encyclopedia about folklore, and they put it in the computer, although it looks like he puts it in with a case, which was weird. And that's just the movie, right? So the movie opens, and it's a pawn shop dude, right? That's an Indian guy. And I mean Indian, I don't mean Native American, I mean Indian. And he is, this guy comes in, he has the rock, like, statue of Leprechaun. I assume that's how the second one ended, I don't remember. But he's got this medallion around his neck that makes him stone, and he pawns him. And this guy's like, no, you can't take the medallion off, but he knows that as soon as he leaves, the guy's going to do it anyway, so he clearly doesn't care that the Leprechaun's going to be unleashed. So Leprechaun like fights him, he bites his toe, he does a couple of other things, but he runs off because he thinks he's got his gold, and the guy's got the medallion now, so he just kind of runs off. But the guy pulls out a CD-ROM. He doesn't have internet. He doesn't just Google. I mean, not that Google existed in 1995, but he doesn't search for something on the internet. He pulls out a CD-ROM, which is cartoons about folklore. He searches for leprechauns and gets a little leprechaun cartoon explaining the rules of leprechauns. This is like the most absurd exposition, like, let's research the subject and find the thing I've ever seen. This paints it in such a specific part. It's this little cartoon. It's like, my name's Paddy O'Reilly, and I'm here to tell you about the leprechauns, and we're going to talk about the pots of gold, and it sets up these things where if there's two leprechauns, they won't like each other, they'll try and destroy each other. But where was that in the last two movies?
That ends up paying forward later.
Yeah, so. Because in this movie, leprechauns are fucking werewolves, where a leprechaun bites a dude and he starts to turn into a leprechaun. Where did that come from, Tim? Where did that come from? Tell me, you miserable sack of shit. Tell me where that comes from.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's on the CD-ROM if you listen to more of it, but I mean, I don't know why you're complaining. You always say how much you like rules, and so I love, first of all, I think it's a
rules
smart
that
way
you
to
stick to, not add more and more rules every movie that completely, I mean, do you think this movie cares about the rules of the last movie at all? Eh? But correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. Wasn't a rule in the previous movies, especially the last one, that he can't take his gold back. He has to be giving his gold. The person has to willingly give the gold over. Was that not a rule?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it.
Case closed. This movie ignores that completely.
No. What's interesting about this is clearly something has happened between the second and the third movie. So it's similar, like, between Empire and Return of the Jedi. And what I want to know is what happens between these movies. I think there's, obviously there's enough story there that could have been mined to, if they ever want to make like a Leprechaun 2.5 or something. I think that would be an interesting area to explore. But I will agree, like, the computer graphics were a little dated. So I will admit to that, but I do think it was a cool way to, quickly add some new mythology to the character that doesn't feel out of line with the other. It's like adding stuff. It's not necessarily taking away from what we've previously known. And I think it sets up some really, cool stuff about them liking potatoes and whatnot.
It's also cool stuff like them liking potatoes.
Yeah, which again I think pays off for like a very funny scene down the line when our main character Scott, I think his name was, who is kind of basically becoming like a teenage leprechaun. And he ends up ordering a lot of potatoes, and it's very funny. He's ordering them from the waitress. They should have called this an American Leprechaun in Vegas. Oh, that would be good. Yeah. That would be funny. But I don't know. There's I don't even know like what to get into because there's so much happening in this movie. But like any good Irishman, he likes his spuds. That was what the cartoon told us. Leprechauns like potatoes. Yeah. Yeah. So I do like the use of like the dual narrative in this movie, where because it kind of feels like fuck you. There's like, because it really is like two things going on that actually honestly would be enough for one horror movie each. Where like, because you obviously have the idea of the leprechaun who's trying to track down his gold and
The
everything.
dual narrative. There's a dual narrative in this movie, he says. Because
because you have like the whole thing with like the leprechaun is its own thing, but then the thing with the coin making the wish like and going into the hands of everyone, and again you can see how it's kind of affecting the people's lives around it because people are getting greedy and trying to steal it and everything. So it is kind of
why is it you like to pretend you know how to talk about movies whenever we talk about a Leprechaun movie? You never sound like this with any other movie. It's just Leprechaun.
Again, I'm just speaking my truth.
When have you ever said dual narrative before? Dual narrative.
I don't know. It just comes out when I'm talking about something that interests me. I guess I don't know. But I think it's fascinating to have these disparate stories happening, and then the way they're eventually able to kind of meet and come together. I just thought was brilliant, really, and dare I say explosive finale, like that last section of the movie. I'll just call it like the showdown at the magic show. That was phenomenal. Which I mean, we got to talk about the magician character later. He was a breath of fresh air in the movie. I don't think we've seen a character like him in any of the previous films. But it felt dangerous. And then the end, the way they defeat the leprechaun is something that I've never seen before. And I'll also go ahead and say that I think this movie is saying some interesting things about healthcare as well.
Honestly, that last point is actually not entirely untrue. There's kind of a weird, because there's a line early on where the mafia boss, who's coming to like collect money from the casino owner, he lists a couple of things that he wants, and he happens to throw in, "I want all Americans to have healthcare." I thought that's an odd topic. Well, I mean, it's topical now still, but
would you say it's ahead of its time? This film?
No, it just tells me that Americans have been needing healthcare for 25 years.
Especially if they're turning into leprechauns.
Yeah. But I thought, okay, that was a weird, interesting line to throw in there for your kind of comedy villain. But later on, it's actually kind of a weird plot point where when the main character needs like surgery, the doctor like leans in and says, "This is a matter of life and death. Do you have health insurance?" And then after they find out that he's got bags full of money, he's like, "Oh, he can afford all sorts. Let's do a lot of tests. Let's test them every test. Let's start with everything begins with A, and we'll charge them for all of it." There's like a weird bit of commentary on healthcare in this movie, and I was not expecting that. So I will concede that somehow Leprechaun 3 does have some sort of statement on healthcare.
Yeah, and what I love is like you have that is kind of meeting up with its like main statement, which is like the idea of greed, because it's making a comment on the U.S. healthcare system, but then once they do find out that he does have a lot of money, you can see how the greed overtakes the doctors to the point where they become like kind of a secondary villain. Like they're like attacking the teenage leprechaun and trying to keep him in the hospital when he needs to go and save I guess you call him his girlfriend.
Teenage leprechaun baby. I listen to Iron Maiden, baby.
Probably listens to like bagpipes or something, but yeah, that's pretty good though. But I mean, that whole hospital scene was incredible. Some really cool stuff that they're doing there. And
let's rewind a little bit. So pawn shop guys watch this. He gets out his gun. He's like, "I want to steal the leprechaun's gold." He confronts him, and he gets hooked. He gets killed. He's completely dead. Leprechaun's mad
his toe bitten off
because there's one coin missing, and his one coin, of course, ends up to the casino because Scott eventually comes in and takes it when he finds the dead body, and he makes a wish as he's holding the coin. And he ends up back at the casino and basically forgets that he saw a dead body for like 40 minutes. It's like much later in the film before he even realizes, oh, by the way, there was a dead body across the street. I should probably go do something about that. But
he's on like the biggest winning streak of his life.
Well, that's the thing. He's traveling to LA for college. He's about maybe 18, 19, right? He's at that age. And he runs into, was it Tammy? Is the main girl? Yeah. And her car's broke down in Vegas. She's sort of waving him down. He's giving her help to drive. There's a weird
Classic
bit of
meet cute.
a classic meet cute where he says, "Have you ever blown a rod?" And she's like, "Excuse me." And he's like, "Your engine." Like,
Is it like a funny like little bit of a miscommunication? I liked it.
you know what? I'll give you this time. You're committed to the bit. I'll give you it. You're committed to the bit.
If you think it's a bit helps you sleep at night, that's fine by me.
It's a bit. You know it's a bit. So, he takes her to work. She works at a casino. She's a magician's assistant. She wants to be a magician herself, which is a fact that's really irrelevant for the rest of the movie. Never really comes into play.
I feel like the idea of ambition is kind of like seeded throughout the movie.
I beg to differ.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ideas of like ambition and like kind of not being like satisfied with your station in life. So, which I feel like is kind of, part of the narrative of greed that they're sowing throughout here. But it all plays a part in the tapestry of the film.
He insists that he wants to see the inside of a casino and that she can get him in because she's obviously going through the workers' entrance. And she's like, "No, you need to be 21. You can't." He's like, "No, please, please." And she's like, "Okay, fine, no gambling, but you can go in and look around." And he's like, "Okay." And he goes in, and for some reason, he is just enamored. It's like, a craps table, a blackjack table, and he's just like, "Ooh." I'm like, why are you so enthralled by this? It's just tables of people gambling. This is not some magical wonderland. And then, of course, he eventually gets the ID. He pulls out. His parents gave him a check for his entire tuition for like, I don't know if it's the year or all 4. I don't know how much college in the US costs, but it's like $23,000. Does that sound like 1 year or all 4 years?
Not sure. I was on a scholarship, so.
Oh, look at me! Right?
Very smart.
Yes. Well, everyone in my country gets a scholarship, so. Suck it. I don't know what tuition for college in the UK costs because it gets paid for. At least it does in Scotland anyway. I don't know about England. England's sure. So he pulls out this check for $23,000, which his parents give him for tuition. I love the idea that he has to go with this check manually and like hand it in at the college. It's not like his parents can just pay it, from where they live. But he takes it out and he's like, "Can I cash this?" And it's the CD manager who we get introduced to because he talks to Tammy at one point, and he's clearly trying to sleep with Tammy. He's being not quite full Weinstein, but he's being like kind of suggestive Weinstein, I suppose we'll call him. And he's like, "Are you old enough to be in here, kid?" And he looks at the check for 23 grand. He goes, "Yeah, you're old enough. You go cash that in over there." He just sees money and he's like, "Yep, you can play." And of course, he loses all 23 grand of his money very quickly.
Yeah. It's very sad.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, like gambling is like gambling addiction is a real problem. I think we're seeing like how someone can, very quickly be enamored by like the glitz and glamour of it, and then to have like a tragic downfall like this. Like obviously, it leads to a redemptive arc for him, but at the time though, you are definitely feeling for the character.
When's your redemptive arc going to come in? I'm looking forward to that. Basically,
it's kind of funny because we're doing this movie because of a bet.
I know. That's true. The woman at the table, Loretta, who we also get introduced to with the scene with the magician, because this is where we meet the manager as well, where we see that the magician's kind of a douchebag. Loretta is just complaining that she's past her prime and she wants to look sexier again and blah blah blah, and she's the one like doing the this roulette table, and she's like, "Hey, you've got a nice watch there. You can go to the pawn shop across the street." So this is what actually makes the two plots intersect, where he goes over, he finds a dead body, calls the police, but he finds the coin, makes a wish, and he's like, "I wish I was back in the casino on a winning streak." So he goes back and he starts winning tons and tons of money. He wins 125 grand, and he uses the coin to sort of like pick the numbers that he's going to use for the roulette. And Loretta kind of picks up on it, and she's like, "I want to steal that coin. I also want to steal all his money," because he's got 125 grand in cash in one of the rooms. The manager gives him a hotel room because it basically wants him to stick around and come back and spend it all. He doesn't want him to leave with it. So that basically sets up that they're going to try and steal it, which they steal the coin. They don't get the money, but yeah, they kind of attack him, and then Leprechaun shows up and attacks him. It's a whole thing. Although, of course, there's a montage as he's walking towards the casino where he runs into Elvis, he runs into various other characters. He's like, "This is my kind of town." Yeah.
He walks by the Golden Nugget, which was funny. He walks by a casino called the Golden Nugget, and obviously he likes gold, so.
Was it funny, Tim? Was it really?
I thought so.
Think about it. Was it really that funny? I don't think it was.
Well, maybe you didn't get it.
Oh, I got it. I got it.
Because he likes gold. It's like, yeah, okay. It would be weird if he was like in the middle of nowhere and just said like, "Oh, I want a golden nugget." But the idea that he's like walking past a casino that's named after the thing that he likes, that's very funny.
You can't just take any joke and say, "Oh, if you said that randomly where there was no context, it wouldn't be funny." Of course it wouldn't be funny. There's no context for it.
Right, so you agree that the context is what made it funny.
I'm saying
yeah,
I'm saying that you can't use that as an example as to why a joke works. Just because there's technically a joke there doesn't mean it's a good joke. All you've proved is that a joke was attempted. It doesn't necessarily mean the joke worked.
Yeah, I mean, I guess mileage may vary, for individual users, but it worked on me, baby. I was hooting and hollering. I had to pause it for a second. Honestly. Actually, this movie actually takes a while to watch because I had to pause a lot.
Oh my god. I don't even. This is more of a shambles than Leprechaun 2 at this point. He gets to the casino. He bites Tommy. He gets thrown out the window at one point. He makes his way back in. There's all sorts of things happening. Basically, Loretta gets her hand on the gold coin and tries to prove to the magician that something's up, that it's usable. And they're not quite getting it to work. They don't understand how to make it work and how to get it to do anything, because she tries to use it to gamble, just like Scott did. And it's actually the manager comes up and holds the coin and says, and because she's kind of making fun of him, saying, "Oh, you want that, Tammy?" And every guy's like, "Oh, I wish I had Tammy. I wish she wanted me." And then Tammy, who's walking by, just like takes off her jacket, gets really skimpy, and comes up and says, "I want you right now on the floor." And it's like, "Oh, let's go up to my room, baby." So they go up, and this is where Laura figures out, she's like, "He said I wish." And this is the point I'm watching this and going, is this basically a Wishmaster sequel now? Like, this is a Wishmaster movie.
Yeah. Which is fun. I think it would have been boring if they just did the same thing over and over again. What I like about the series is it's constantly trying to reinvent itself, and
by forgetting every single rule the previous movies established.
No, they're not forgetting things. They're just adding things, so there's more to love, which is one of the reasons why I think there's so much that can be enjoyed from this. And the whole stuff with Mitch, I was afraid that it was gonna start veering into kind of gross territory, but luckily I feel like they just skirt the line, and so I do like that instead of actually doing like any sexual stuff, she kind of just like is very rough with them and kind of like punches them and hits them a bit, and then luckily before anything gross actually starts to happen, the wish is reverted because Loretta steals it, so she's able to escape, and then Mitch ends up getting his just desserts when the Leprechaun robot comes out of the TV.
From his perspective, when she sort of wakes up and snaps out of the wish stream, or whatever you want to call it, and she's about to take off her top, and she's in his hotel room. From his perspective, she did throw herself at him, agreed to come up to his place, and then all of a sudden just completely changed her demeanor. So that's kind of funny.
It is like technically. I'm glad that you agreed it was funny. His perspective, it's not like he's trying to do anything wrong. Like, he doesn't realize like the power he holds in the coin.
Yes, he doesn't know that he made a wish. He doesn't understand that's why it's happening. So from his perspective, he's not actually doing anything too seedy right now. He's just accepting her advances. Afterwards, he does say some really murky shit where he's like, "Oh, that woman will never work in this town again." All she had to do was cooperate. So he sounds a lot more Weinstein afterwards. But in the scene itself, like, to his credit, he didn't realize he'd made her do it. He was just accepting his good fortune, basically.
Definitely.
But then the other woman comes out of the TV and she talks to him, comes out of TV, starts having sex with him, but then she turns into like a weird robot where it's just a robot with like a boobs and hands and a head, and then Leprechaun like electrocutes him.
Yeah, which so this is like a pretty fun scene because I like that they're kind of veering into the sci-fi territory, which is something that the series really hasn't gone too much into yet. But it's a really cool design on the robot, and again, it's just one of those very like cringeworthy kind of deaths. Like when you think about it, like the amount of pain and everything that he would have gone through being electrocuted. So it really makes you realize just how vindictive the Leprechaun can be. And I think really it only gets worse from here. Like the next couple of deaths are yikes.
Although again, much like the last two films, the rules or the extent of which powers the Leprechaun has varies wildly, and there's like really no barometer for it. He can make fake people come out of TV and then turn into robots.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they do play a little fast and loose with the rules, but I think it never really feels out of realm of possibility for what he can do.
Never feels out the realm of possibility. That's what you're going with.
Right.
Never feels out of the realm of possibility. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So Scott is starting to turn to a leprechaun. He's eating potatoes. He's occasionally saying things in an Irish accent, although it's a bad Irish accent. But honestly, it's probably better than Warwick Davis's Irish accent. So I mean,
Yeah, and I do think that he does a lot of limericks, which are very funny and interesting. Like it's one of the things the leprechauns do is they speak in limericks, so he does that a lot, which throughout the movie, and you can tell is kind of becoming more leprechaun-like because he starts speaking in limericks, and some of the rhymes they come up with are pretty good too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's also starting to look more like a leprechaun. Like he's like hair looks like a little greenish.
No. He's not starting to look like a leprechaun. He's starting to look like a freaking werewolf. He's not turning into a leprechaun. He's got hair growing out of like behind him and on his cheeks, and he's got like hair on his chest growing in. It looks like he's turning into a werewolf. He's like a wolf man.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the start of the process. I'm like, obviously, we don't see him go full leprechaun, but I think if we did, we would, see more and more of the metamorphosis as it goes.
You're such full of shit. You're such full of shit. So they take him to the hospital to try and figure this out. Loretta uses the coin, as we said, to wish to be sexy and younger or whatever. Notably, by the way, I recognize this actress from something. She's actually the lead from Texas Chainsaw 2. That's what the actress is from.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't even realize that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
And she comes in, she's all proud of her body, and then the leprechaun shows up and says, "Oh, you want bigger boobs and a bigger ass? So here you go." So she is killed by her body inflating to a ridiculous degree. Her lips inflate, her boobs inflate, her ass inflates, and then she eventually just pops.
Yeah.
That's the death.
This was insane. Like this, I mean, no pun intended, but this blew me away. The the practical effects on this look great. It still is effective to this day, and this was probably my favorite kill of the movie. Excellent.
So they go to the hospital. We have the aforementioned sort of section about him, being under the surgery and like the doctors like being greedy and whatnot. And there's also Leprechaun follows them there because he thinks they've got the coin, and Tammy gets like strapped to a chair at one point, and Leprechaun's going to do whatever to her, and it's a whole thing. Luckily, they get away. I say luckily, I don't really care. But the magician by this point has the coin, and the magician wishes that he was the best magician on earth. So he's doing a magic show at the end of the movie, and they come running in to stop this, and the leprechaun actually puts the magician in his box where he's meant to be sawed in half, but actually saws him in half. So when he separates the two halves, there's like body parts falling out, and it's really grisly. The crowd are all, because earlier on in the movie when he's performing before, you see that the crowd don't give a shit. They're yawning, they're making out, they're doing everything but paying attention to him. Whereas at the end, because he's the best ever now, everyone's like ooh and ah and like yay and magic and whatever.
Yeah, and this, this had to be like an eventual confrontation, because you have this guy who's like not like a real magician, but he's finally going toe to toe with someone of real magic, and it's interesting to kind of see those that kind of personalities clash, and obviously the Leprechaun ends up getting the upper hand, and it's interesting how they kind of turn this like classical magic trick on its head, by doing it for real, because normally you saw someone in half and then they kind of separate the boxes and there's nothing there and they put them back together. But in this movie, they kind of were able to figure out a smart way of doing that by doing it for real and then separating the boxes, and they have all the guts and stuff hanging out, which looked like just terrifying and gruesome. It was really, really something else. One of my favorite kills in the movie, to be honest. And here's where, like, I would say the shit kind of hits the fan. Like, this is like your big epic showdown, because once the crowd realize that this is for real, they start freaking out and they are trying to run for the exits. But like the Leprechaun uses his magic to kind of throw a waiter onto a table, and then that's when the main characters show up. And like you mentioned earlier, they set up at the start of the movie that like two leprechauns can't really exist in the same space. So you kind of have this newer-ish, not fully leprechaun person yet, who has to take down the villainous leprechaun. And so they're kind of like fighting and going back and forth. And then I think it's interesting when you have the leprechaun is trying to tempt him by, he even says like, come join the green side, which would be interesting to see. Like, since we know that like two leprechauns usually fight together, I think it would be interesting to see what it would be like if they teamed up together. But luckily the hero still has enough of himself in himself that he can resist that urge.
Well, yes, because this is the thing. Again, out of nowhere, this movie sets up that if you destroy the leprechaun's gold, you'll destroy the leprechaun, even though that's never been mentioned before. But
I think you can make we've always known though that his power is in his gold. Like the gold and leprechaun are intricately connected, so it's not like that much of a stretch to imagine that you destroy one, you destroy the other.
Not that much of a stretch. Mm-hmm.
Very good. I mean, so I think it leads to this like really cool like final scene here where he blowtorches his pot of gold, which that in of itself would be pretty cool. But they go the extra mile and they actually show that that makes the leprechaun burst into flames. So you have the leprechaun flying up in a really haunting imagery of like him just on fire, flying in the air. It's really, really cool.
Very good, yes. Because the whole thing is that he's trying to tempt him, like the idea that he won't want to destroy the gold because he wants gold because he's a leprechaun. But no, he keeps his wits about him. He burns the gold, and the leprechaun seemingly dies. Although he's back for the fourth one next time, so we'll see how that works out. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but we will definitely see him again.
Yes, and Tammy is like all happy, and they're together now, and the movie ends. Who gives a shit? That's it. That's it done.
Yeah. So cool. I like that we get a happy ending for these characters. And
did you care about Tammy and Scott? Did you? Were you really into these characters as people?
I thought they had good chemistry.
Actually, the actor who plays Tammy doesn't seem to have done much. Like, she was in like 3 things back in this time period. The actor who plays Scott does still act in a bunch of TV shows, but he's actually a writer and actually worked on the script for Power Rangers in 2017, Kong Skull Island in 2017 as well. He did the story for Need for Speed. He wrote the script for Flight and Real Steel.
Yeah, so there's definitely one thing that the series has been known for is it's kind of like a launching vehicle for some of like the bigger stars of today. Obviously, you have Jennifer Aniston in the first one. In the second one, you have Clint Howard, and then in this
Clint
one
Howard,
they have.
one of the bigger stars of today. That's what you're going with. Okay.
He's still popping up in movies. I mean, he's like kind of a little bit of a household name. You'll see him in TV shows and movies to this day. But yeah, I mean, this one is no exception. They have, this guy who, went ahead and decided to kind of pave his own path in Hollywood by making some of the best movies of the last couple of years.
Really? So you're a big fan of Real Steel and Need for Speed and Kong Skull Island?
I like Real Steel a lot. Haven't seen Need for Speed. Kong Skull Island was fun.
Real Steel's not bad, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably, I'm sure he, used a lot of what he learned on set to, make a good script.
Oh, how did you write the new Power Rangers movie? Well, I remember my time on the set of the Leprechaun 3.
Yeah.
I learned so much on that set. Oh, it's a stretch, and you know it.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming you liked it, but I mean, if you didn't, then I don't know. I'm sorry you couldn't see some of the interesting aspects of it, but I don't know. I think it's still a hoot. I think if anything, it's aged well. It's probably better than when it first came out. I think the kills are great. Again, it's adding a lot more mythology to the character, and a lot of stuff that sticks around that we kind of still think of when we think of the character today. And again, just like a really simple story that probably is not as good as it has the right to be, but what they managed to end up doing with it is I thought really surprising. Again, I wasn't expecting much when I was revisiting it. I was very happy to learn that it's not just a shitty sequel that they just had to get out to like keep the rights or something. Like, this is something that they put a lot of thought into and actually managed to kind of build upon what has already been a very successful franchise at this point.
The amount of integrity you seem to think that the creators of Leprechaun 3 have is baffling to me. Baffling.
I mean, it's not like we don't. I guess we don't agree on every movie, so I don't know. But it's weird to me though that you can't kind of see some of these points that I think are very obvious.
There's a delusional element to your Leprechaun love that is transcendent beyond logic, reason,
okay. I mean,
basic intelligence.
If you say so, I don't know. I just tell it like it is, I guess.
To quote the film that we're doing later today for everyone, if I can remember the quote exactly, if you're not careful, Tim, I'm going to have some momentary muscle coordination problems.
Well, I mean, luckily I'm far enough away that I don't have to worry about that. Unless you have some type of, weird magical leprechaun powers, I think I'm good.
The teleporter, that's what I need. So I could show up and just hit Timmy. That was so nice, actually. Yes.
So
every time Tim says leprechaun, I want a button I can press it, just like this hand comes in and slaps him in the face. Like, no more leprechaun, Tim. No more leprechaun.
So you think the way to deal with people that disagree with you is through violence?
Just you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just you. Maybe Connor, actually. More so Connor, in fact. All right, that is Leprechaun 3. But did I have a subtitle this one? I can't remember.
I believe it's just 3.
It's just 3, okay. It's not Leprechaun 3, Viva Las Vegas, or...
That's I think that would be good, but I think they just didn't want to mess with it too much. Most of the other movies so far had just been simple titles. I think they want to keep it simple, which I respect.
Which is why the very next one has a subtitle.
Well, I mean, at that point, I think the next one is very interesting. We'll get into it. That's a little bit of a departure, so I think they want to set that aside. But I do consider these first 3 as to be kind of part of a trilogy, in my mind at least. Like everything else, like it's obviously like still in continuity and everything, but these first 3 are kind of like one story in my mind.
There's not even a single character outside of Leprechaun himself that appears in 2 of these 3 movies, never mind all 3.
Sure, but I mean, there's still like a narrative you can follow through all of them.
Okay, what's the narrative through line? What was the trilogy about?
Well, what we're looking at here is the idea
I regret. I've made a huge mistake. I've made a mistake.
Well, it wasn't even just go on to ratings. We've been recording for a long time.
Yes, we're gonna rate it. We're gonna rate Leprechaun, Timmy. Leprechaun 3 specifically. Jesus.
So again, I think, it's already, has some merits from the first 2 successful films, and I think they don't waste those good graces and just sit on their laurels. They still manage to do something that's new and different and exciting, while not at like the sacrifice of what we've come to know and love from the series. So I think it's a hoot, and again, like I said, it doesn't feel dated. If anything, it's aged better than I think most movies from around this time. It's still not perfect. Like for example, like I would have liked to have seen more of the Leprechaun in the casino. We get a little, look at him playing some games, which I thought was fun. But I feel like there's a couple of wasted opportunities where it would have been interesting to maybe see him, do some more stuff in this Las Vegas setting. So because of that, I can't give it a perfect score. But again, still gonna go, I think, fairly decent. So I give this one a 8.5.
8.5. That's what you're going
Yeah.
with. The movie where the mafia character and his henchmen stand and have a conversation about what underwear they're wearing because one of them is getting a wedgie.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
I think that brings like some interesting character traits. Like, they don't just want to do kind of the typical boring like Scorsese mafia men that we've seen done to death. Like they actually bring some life and character to these characters. So I thought that was cool.
Oh yeah, excellent, great. 4 out of 10.
That's not bad.
4 out of 10. It is somewhat watchable. At least stuff is happening. I'll give it that. There's a few odd chuckles here or there, but ultimately the acting is not that good. The characters are very bland. There's very little momentum in the plot. So Leprechaun 3 is 4 out of 10. So that pretty much brings an end to the show. That brings an end to this episode of Screams After Midnight. Leprechaun 3, of course, the topic of conversation. You can let us know what you thought of that movie in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all the usual things. You can ding the bell to make sure you get notifications. You can rate us on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars, helps us out a lot, spreads us out to more people. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/MailedFuzzTV. For as little as $1 per month, you get an exclusive bonus episode every month, so make sure you go and check it out over there. Obviously, there's a bit of a back catalogue built up now, so go and have a look. Otherwise, you can get us on Twitter at ScreamsMidnight, and that is pretty much it. So thank you very much. So like I said at the start, this is the final Screams After Midnight for the October-thon that we're recording. Not the final one to go out. The Shining is coming later today, so look forward to that. But this is the last one we're recording, so it feels like the end of a journey. It feels like the path is finally wound down, and it's time to sleep for a week before doing our first November episode. So that is us. So thank you once again for watching us. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies. Happy Halloween, guys.